Regulatory to me, where we deep dive into the world of regulatory. So today we're actually going to be talking about what a decentralised procedure is. And so Zora, do you want to start us off here?
Yeah, so I would say DCP is probably my area of expertise. Something that I do and work on day in and day out, and I have been doing for the last 8 years. So anybody got any questions, please hit me up because I will be very happy to respond. So a decentralized procedure, which I will refer to from now on as a DCP, is used when a medicine can be or should be approved in more than one member state and it's not bound by the conditions of a CP. So we will talk about CPs in another video, and there are certain conditions that if your medicine meets one of those, you need to submit by a CP. So a DCP is when you don't have to, your product doesn't essentially fall into one of those conditions. There are a few good things about choosing a DCP. Obviously, you get to choose the RMS, so the lead. You also get to choose the concerned member states, so the CMSs that are involved, because you only want to market your product in those specific countries. You have harmonized product information text, which you don't get when you have a national procedure. And also the name. So again, it's something we'll touch upon in the CP, but when you submit a centrally authorized procedure, you have to have the same name across all of the member states. Whereas when you submit a DCP, you can have different names in different member states. So what I mean by that is you can have a brand name. So something like Nurofen is a brand name, or you can have a, INN plus MAH, which is something like ibuprofen,
Do you want
GSK.
to just say what an INN is?
An INN is the active substance. So the active substance, so ibuprofen, paracetamol, acetylsalicylic acid, diclofenac, they're all INNs. So
and then plus the MAH. So the
plus
MAH,
the MAH,
is the marketing authorization holder.
So you can choose to have either a brand name or just the active substance. However, for a DCP, if it's a generic and your reference product that you're using for your application is submitted via a CP, you have to have the same type of name.
Yep.
So you either have to have the same brand name in all of the member states, or you have INN plus MAH or just the INN. So it needs to follow the same pattern. Once you've selected your RMS and you've selected your legal basis, you will have to submit a request form to the RMS. So all of these documents are available on the CMDH website. So you essentially fill out a form asking that particular member state if they are willing to act as RMS.
And you have to do that in advance, right? Because the slots get taken up quite quickly.
Yes.
So you have to prepare that from months, even years before.
Yeah, so it is quite difficult at the moment because there are a few countries that release their slots, so that publicly release them, so you can see. So I think it's the Netherlands, Sweden have like a timetable of when you can submit or when you can request slots for like Q1 26, Q2 26 and stuff like that. And Germany also now work on like a slot based approach. And what we see is a lot of the slots for next year or for the rest of 2025 are already taken up.
No way.
And and a lot of 2026 as well in the first quarter has already been taken up. So it is very hard to try and find something
very
if
competitive.
it's very, and especially when you want to submit within the next few months, it's quite hard for you to get maybe the RMS that you want because of the availability.
And sometimes that RMS, you've already worked with them with other products and you know how they work, their communication style, all of that kind of stuff comes into hand. And sometimes it's just personal preference to work with a specific country. And then when you don't have that option and are working with a completely new country that you maybe haven't worked with before, sometimes it can become a bit challenging because you don't know the assessors or you don't know the type of... It's just weird. It's
the
just
type of questions that they're going to ask.
And the type of communication as well. Sometimes you get back because you can kind of get a feel for the type of... like if you get a specific question, right, and then I can just go back to the assessor and say this because you've got that understanding with each other,
and you build up a relationship. There's so many. You build up a relationship. There's so many like assessors or so many procedure coordinators that I have worked with, and if I see their name, I'll be happy to work with them because I know there are certain people who, if I have a question, they'll be happy to answer the phone, and they will answer the phone and they will respond. Whereas there are some people or some agencies, just because they are so not understaffed, but maybe they have a lot of work and there's a real lack of resources that they don't have the time.
I mean, we're seeing that with the MHRA, and I'll touch on that when we talk about the national procedures, but they don't answer the phone anymore.
Yeah, a lot, because I think it's also because they all work from home.
Yeah.
So you can never catch them in the office. I think that's, before COVID, when everybody was in the office, you ring the switchboard, please, can you put me through to this person? And even if it's not that person, you get through to somebody in the team.
And a lot of the time it's easier to get an answer to a question, or something.
It saves a lot of back and forth on email.
Exactly, it saves the timeline. Whereas with, as I said, like if you've got a random country you've never worked with before, you don't know how they are as a person or assessor, and it just it takes a bit longer to get the answers that you're looking for, the communication sometimes, and other times you're lucky and you might form a new best CMS.
But now also the CMDH and the EMA are working to look about, resources. There are things in place now like ASMF work sharing, where one country is responsible for the review of that ASMF and then nobody else needs to do it. They can just refer to that report. And I saw in one of the recent CMDH meeting minutes as well that they want to have a similar kind of approach for clinical studies as well. So that would be quite good. So it's something that they're working on. It's something that organizations like Medicines for Europe always bring up in the interested parties meetings with the CMDH as well, because everybody sees it. Everybody sees that it's hard to get a slot and things are really, really delayed. Procedure restarts and stuff like that are always delayed because of the lack of resources.
I think as long as they are looking to improve, that's all that we can ask for, right? Because this process has probably been going on for years on end, and it's only now that we're actually getting feedback.
I think it got worse when COVID. It did get worse over COVID.
And now their hands are tied and they have to make a change because we're not now accepting this.
Which is why I think a lot of countries also started to bring in a specific number of slots. So like Germany, for example, before you could just submit a RMS request form and they would accept it, whereas now they have like a limited number of slots per month, because they had that backlog and they needed to catch up, and there's no way you can catch up if you're continuing to accept procedures. You just need to focus on the ones that you have.
Definitely.
And I think something that's quite interesting, or for me anyway, I always look at the CMDH statistics. So at the end of the monthly meetings, they always put in how many times a member state was used as an RMS or how many times they were a CMS. And then every 6 months, so they do it twice a year, they have a report of how many DCPs have been submitted to the EU, how many times a specific country has worked as a CMS or RMS, how many times the MRP has been submitted. It's really quite interesting.
I've actually not looked at
Have you not? Yeah, you can see there's a few countries that are always the RMS.
They're the favourites, Germany being one of them.
Germany, probably Netherlands, Sweden. I think Austria was climbing up the ranks as well.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So it's always interesting to see. And then you get a feeling about their workload as well, how many procedures they've started in a month, and sometimes it's like over 15 or over 20. And you understand why your procedure might be a bit delayed.
I get that, but I think definitely there's room for improvement, and we're all for
which
that.
Is what everybody's working on. So once you submit your RMS request, you would normally put in your submission date as well. So up until your submission date, you're working towards preparing your dossier as best as you can. You're preparing it in line with the notice to applicants, the pharmaceutical legislation and directive, and any national rules and requirements that apply for the countries that you are submitting in.
And I think that's something good to note there as well, that with you have to follow the national national guidelines for the DCPs as well. So like, say for example, you've got Poland and you've got maybe the UK as well. You have to follow those specific guidelines for those countries within that DCP. So it's not just one application fits all those countries. So you have to be quite mindful as well and adhere to those national regulations.
So once you have all of your documents ready, what you need to do is submit your procedure via CESP, which is an online portal, and you submit in an ECTD format, which is electronic technical common document. Okay. And then your procedure begins. So what we'll do now is we'll just run through the flowchart of a typical DCP and what you would expect in a timetable. So after your submission comes the validation phase.
And it's a 14-day validation phase, and we normally write it as like minus 14 days
Yep.
for the start of the procedure. And this is where you want to actually technically validate, or the agencies technically validate your procedure to make sure that you've got all the administrative information and there's nothing lacking, which will stop them from going ahead to assess the procedure. If there is, then they'll come back to you and give you a timeline. Normally it's like 2 days or something like that to give feedback on what it is that they've asked for, and you'll have to submit that to the agencies, and then from there that's when you go ahead and you start the procedure.
Yeah, I think some of the common things that they look for during the validation phase are things like your GMPs are in date, your QP declaration, your audit's in date, and they really, really,
and I think,
go through the application form and pick out any mistakes that you have.
That's where people trip up on a lot though, because they won't check their GMP certificates, or they'll check it maybe months before,
Exactly.
and then they'll submit and it's actually out of date
by the time you submit.
And your QP declarations as well, because we've mentioned that you need 3 years of
3 years for the
validity
audit.
for the QP declaration. And if you are like out with those dates, then it's not valid anymore, and you need to have a new QP declaration. And we find quite often where you'll trip up on those small dates or things, application form details not matching what's in the cover letter, or some of the details of the agency or the specific member states in the application form have not been stated correctly. Things like that, just minor things like administrative things, which shouldn't trip you up, but you'd be surprised how many times.
And I think even though the validation phase, like you said, is minus 14 days, so technically it's supposed to last 14 days, it does not.
It is a lot longer.
Especially when you have 27 countries that you are submitting to. Some of them don't send you comments in 2 weeks, and sometimes when you do reply, they don't get back to you quick enough. So it typically takes a lot longer than 14 weeks, although it's supposed to take 14 days, sorry, not weeks. Imagine. Sometimes it doesn't take 14 weeks.
No, I would say probably like a month.
A bit longer. It depends on the number of countries as well, I think. If you have a smaller number, I think you can do it within a month. But there are certain countries...
I suppose when you've got tons and tons of countries, and it's going to take a bit longer. So it is a bit misleading, the minus 14 days, but that is a standardised timeline that we are given. So... then what happens?
So then after the procedure is valid in all of the countries, they have all confirmed validity in a system called CTS, which is something that the agencies use to track validity of submissions. The RMS then sends you an email to say, congratulations, your DCP is valid and you can start. And what they'll do is they will issue you with a timetable. So this is a strict timetable that will be followed through the first phase of the assessment. And once that timetable is issued, you can go ahead and submit your second sequence in ECTD, kind of fixing all of those mistakes. And any of the updated documents that you provided during the validation phase, you would include them as part of your day 0 sequence, or your validation sequence, as people like to call it. And then day 0 is when your procedure officially starts.
And then you've got a 70-day waiting period, and that's when the RMS review your application, and they'll provide you with comments on day 70. So they'll go through everything with a fine tooth-nick comb, and they'll then ask a million questions on why have you done this, or why have you used this specific starting material, all of these questions that you then need to justify or provide responses to.
So next is day 100, where the CMSs raise any additional concerns that the RMS did not raise. Sometimes they even repeat what the RMS has said just to prove a point. And they would also talk about or raise any questions that are specific to their country. So if there is any issue with the legal, the legal status, so OTC, RX, or how the prescription medication is to be sold in that country, they will also raise that. And if they have any concerns with product names, they will also raise that. So if we were proposing a brand name, for example, and in one country it's got a trademark, another country has company
many times.
Another company has registered a trademark, they will raise issues like that.
And sometimes you're kind of back and forth throughout the procedure on the names of the products. It takes ages, and it's so annoying.
Sometimes you just let it go to the national phase and let the national teams deal with it.
Okay, so after that comes the clock stop, so that then you get to day 105, and then you get a 3-month clock stop. So that's when you're given time as the applicant to generate all your responses to the RMS and the CMS, and get all the documents that you need as requested by the RMS and CMS, and prepare for your justification.
With the clock stops as well, so yeah, it's like you mentioned, it's 3 months. And what a lot of agencies tend to ask for as well is the draft responses.
Oh, yes.
So we submit the draft responses to all of the questions that have been raised, and that gives the RMS a chance to review the questions. So review our answers, sorry. So that goes to the RMS only. They should have 4 weeks to review. We don't see that because of issues that we've spoken about before in terms of resources and stuff. So how in an ideal world it would work is you submit your day 105 responses, at the end of that 3-month clock stop period, and then the RMS reviews your draft responses in a month, and they sometimes provide you with feedback on the major concerns. So you have either major concerns, which, it's in the name, is quite a major serious issue, or you have other concerns. So some agencies will review your major concerns and give you feedback. If they think you haven't responded to the question good enough or well enough, they will re-ask the question, and they will also give you an opportunity to respond to that additional question during the clock stop. So you can kind of resolve that major objection before the clock restarts. And there are some agencies which will review both major and other concerns. So they, the whole thing, they look at that again. And again, they give you the option if you want to update anything before the final responses. And then there are also some authorities that will not review anything. So they'll still take the 4 weeks, they will review it themselves.
But they don't really ask many questions.
And they don't give you feedback. They don't give you feedback. So anyway, if we take the best example, which is, they reviewed your major objections, they've said everything is fine. What they'll do is they will say, okay, great, go ahead and submit your final responses to all of the CMSs. So then you submit your final response, and then they reissue a timetable, which will be the second phase timetable. And that's when your day 106 is, and what we call a procedure restart.
And another thing actually we've got to mention is, the clock stop is for 3 months, but it can be extended by up to, I think the longest clock stop I had was like a year and a half, 2 years.
Oh, I've had ones like that. They have to be justified though.
Yeah, of course.
And there are certain things that you are unable to do in your clock stop, like you can't request an extension because you're reformulating the whole product. Because they don't want to reassess everything again. And I think in certain cases as well, they can ask the CMDH to say whether it's a acceptable justification or not. But in most cases, maybe you just need some extra time to do some studies.
So that's something important to note. And so part of the second assessment phase, if we move on to that, is again, it's kind of the same thing that happens over again as the first phase. So at day 120, the RMS will again issue an assessment report, and most of the questions by this point have been resolved, or they should be resolved. But again, sometimes you do end up getting major objections at this point as well.
Yeah, you can.
And then Zora, do you want to mention the next day?
So then the next is day 145, which is, again, similar to day 100, is when the CMS raises any comments or concerns that have not been addressed as part of the day 105 responses.
And then again, you would respond to all of the questions through day 160. And do you provide draft ones for these ones?
So with the second phase of assessment, you don't have a clock stop at all. So when the procedure restarts, you have to go through until the end.
And so that's day 160, and it's quite a bit nerve-wracking at this stage, isn't it? Because you're like, oh my god, what's going to happen?
Exactly, what other questions are they going to ask? And you don't have, because you're set to that timetable, there's no wiggle room. You have to respond when you have to respond.
And then sometimes you're on such a you are on such a tight deadline as well, and kind of communicate with the CMO if there's information that you need from them, or whoever it is that you need
suppliers,
information from.
API suppliers.
It's quite hard, because then you're sitting there waiting for a response from other people, and you're relying on other stakeholders, and that could be quite tense.
And then after the day 160 responses is the day 180 assessment report. So again, it's the RMS's assessment of the remaining questions.
Yeah, sometimes you have like, at this point you would expect just like a minor comment.
Yeah,
or
I think a lot of product information text
yeah, at this
kind
point,
of
right.
things as well, yeah.
And then again, CMS questions on day 195, and the lower, well, as we move through the flow chart and the timetable, you would expect less and less questions, but it doesn't mean you won't get any questions as well. And major objections, that's something that you can also get at last minute, and then I think we will talk about how it kind of goes to CHMP decisions. But at this point, you generally get an idea of where your procedure is going and whether it's going to be approved or not.
Yeah. And then I think it's quite, like I said, it's quite tight at this time as well. So if the CMS has raised comments at day 195, the next RMS assessment report is at day 205. So we have anywhere between, day 195 and day 205, which is only 10 calendar days, to respond. And we need to respond before day 205 because the RMS needs time to assess and complete the assessment report. So I think what we tend to do, if there isn't that many questions, is submit around the day 200 mark. So then, day 205 is when the RMS shares their preliminary final assessment report.
Yeah. And then day 210 is when you have the end of procedure. So you'll have the end of procedure report, and you'll have either approved or not approved, or it needs to, if you can't reach a consensus, it goes to CHMP, isn't it?
It goes to the CMDH referral, yeah.
It goes to the CMDH referral for them to have their input on why the questions haven't been resolved, and to reach a consensus essentially.
Yeah, and I think before it reaches the referral stage as well, there's also an opportunity between, I think it's day 195.
Yeah.
If there are any major objections that still stand, there's an option for like a breakout session. So that's when you meet with the agencies that have raised the major objection. The RMS and the applicant all meet and they try to come to a consensus. Yeah. But I guess if that major objection still stands and it's a risk to public health at day 210, then your procedure cannot be approved.
Yeah.
But on the plus side, when you have received an end of procedure letter at day 210, which, hopefully we all receive, it triggers the national phase. So because you're part of the national team now, I'll let you explain what happens in the national phase.
Yeah, so the national phase lasts like between 30 days to 1 year, and this is where like national issues are kind of resolved or product names are discussed. If you are part of a specific EU country that has a different language, then you have to do the translations at this point. With me, I'm UK and Ireland, so we're quite lucky where it's just in English. So you don't need to worry about translations.
But then as part of the normal text that we create, we put in like product name in brackets, so then would you just have to replace all the product name?
Exactly, just update that and then update the MEH details. So generally, that's what happens after the procedure, and then from there, that's it approved.
Yeah. So it differs on the country. So some countries, like you said, have a 30-day national MA approval time, and some of them have all the way up until a year. So you're not allowed to sell that product on that market until you have the MA.
Yeah.
There are other conditions as well, like exclusivity, patents and stuff, but we'll go into that in another video on when you can sell. So in a nutshell, I guess that's what a DCP is, the kind of flowchart of a DCP. There are some good SOPs and some really good guidelines on the CMDH website, like you can kind of estimate when your end of procedure is going to be. If you know the submission date, you can kind of estimate when the day 0 is going to be, when your clock stop is going to be.
Just plan resources.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of my favorite guidances to go to. You also have national requirements as well. So say if, like you were saying, with countries like Poland have different national requirements, any country that you need to submit a wet ink document or a hard copy document, they are listed on this website. There's some specific things. Some countries like the cover letter with the CESP number written in pencil before you send it to them. Yeah. You have, I think one of the countries as well, you have to address the cover letter to a certain person.
Yeah.
So, So all of those kind of requirements are on the CMDH website.
Yeah.
So what we will do is we will put a few of these ones that we think are quite important into the description box. So if you want to have a look, please feel free to do so.
And if you've got any questions on the CMDH websites and EMA websites, etc., then you can drop a comment down below and we'll get back to you on that.
Yes. So one other thing that you can look for on the CMDH website is all of the DCPs that have been registered. So on the CMDH website, there is a link to something called the MRI index. And if you go into the MRI index and you type in an active substance name, you can see every single DCP that has been approved. You have some of the details, you have the RMS, you've got the CMS, you've got the applicant. For newer DCPs, you can also find the product information text and the public assessment report as well.
Oh, amazing.
Yes, and the CMDH are really pushing for product information text to be kept up to date and for public assessment reports to be kept on the MRI index. So for ease of, other companies having a look. And just to talk about what the public assessment report is. So at day 210, well, actually, throughout the procedure, we've been referring to these assessment reports where the RMS looks at everything in detail. There is like a standard template on the CMDH website that the member states use as well. And what happens is at the end of the procedure, they complete or they fill in a public assessment report. So it does not include any confidential information. It includes, basic info about the product, which is, not commercially sensitive, doesn't have anything confidential in there, nothing about the manufacturing details. And that is sent to the applicant as well to review before it's published. Yeah. So if you ever wanted to have a look at some brief history on why a DCP was approved or some details on there, you can have a look.
Changes as well that are made.
So they do post approval changes as well.
And then you'll have a public assessment report to say why this change was made actually. And sometimes when you're trying to do the same thing and reference another company of what you've done, you would just reference that public assessment report to say, well, they did it. So
you can't really use a public assessment report, but you can have a look
as an example.
Yeah, you can have a look at other things that other people have done as well.
One thing that jumps to mind is we've done reclassifications of say POM to P, which is prescription only medicine to pharmacy medicine, and for that there's specific strengths that can be changed over, and then if you're above a specific strength you obviously need to stay in POM. So we've used reference from a public assessment report from another company for a similar drug or the same drug product, it has to be, to say actually, well, they've done it, so why can't we do it?
Same. You go into the national authority websites as well, and some when you're looking on the MRI index, it will take you to the national authority websites as well, so you can have a look at some of the details there. Sometimes they're not in English, only if they were acting as the RMS, that the text is in English and the the public assessment report is in English. But if you're trying to submit something with an OTC legal status and maybe you are not comfortable with that, you can go onto the national agency website and have a look at the same product, like you said, in different countries and say, well, actually, if they've done it and if it's been accepted before, why can't we do it? Yeah.
And I think another thing about the MRI index is it's amazing for generic products.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Because all the reference products are there. Yeah. So it's great for when you're trying to compare your product or have the reference product and just say, well, actually, this company did it and that's what we're trying to kind of copy, but kind of copy. So it's great to look as a reference to say, to find your information.
Just to make sure you're on the right track as well.
Exactly. And you have all the details that you should have. So it's a great reference to look at when you are doing generics. Yeah. So thanks for listening to this podcast on decentralised procedures. We hope you've enjoyed it. We will be talking about the different submission routes in our other podcasts, so make sure to check them out. And we hope to catch you on the next one.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.